EBS, you go to upgrade to EBS 12.2, it's the same thing. So the upgrade to 12.2 gives you a version built with Fusion middleware, enables online patching. You start at it, what the upgrade itself delivers is a 12.2.0 release. You don't actually run on that. You then apply an update that takes you to the release you're going to run on, a 12.2.7, let's say, when you first did your upgrade. And then later on, you can apply an update now, for example, to go to the 12.2.10 release. So you keep applying these updates. Now, those updates don't change the underlying technology. Okay, so there's a distinction between major upgrades where you change the technology, the data model, and the applications code at the same time, and these annual release updates that just can be applied on top of the technology you already have. So the key advance we've had, and what we call it continuous innovation, is that as you go forward from here, we're not going to force that same major upgrade anymore. We're going to say what you can do is at the same application level you're already at, we can move you to a later version of the underlying technology. So we'll take the version you already have and we will perform essentially rebuild it for you. It's like we're going to re-platform you from the Fusion Middleware 11 based version that you're running to a later version of Fusion Middleware with a later Java version and later versions of compilers and all the great technical stuff that advances. But you won't have to change the application code level that you're already running. There won't be a database driver that moves your data into different columns and tables or does any of that kind of stuff. So it really separates the technical advanced dimension from the application advanced dimension. So once you've done this tech stack upgrade, you will then be able to continue to say, take the EBS update from 2021 or 2022 or whatever, put it at 2023, put it on top of the one you already had. And again, continue to advance at an application level. And as we need to, we're going to try to do as little as possible, but as we need to, we'll continue to advance the technology through this sort of replatforming approach, separating it from the application approach. So that's why we call 12.2 the continuous innovation release. We're going to be able to advance the technology without having to have a 12.3 or a 13 that would be an EBS upgrade, a major upgrade. There won't be a major upgrade into a major application release where you have to change everything all at the same time. So we're separating those ways to advance. So that is not available yet. We're working on this, but this is really an important development in making eBusiness Suite easier to live with, to get rid of these major upgrade projects and break it down to where you're taking updates at a time and of a scope that makes sense for your business. So the final topic is really EBS. What are we doing to make EBS more effective to run? One of the things we're doing is making sure we leverage our cloud infrastructure so that you have a really good option to run EBS on our cloud infrastructure. So our cloud infrastructure, there's really three levels of benefit that you get, if you will, by talking about running EBS that you might be running today in your own data center on our cloud infrastructure. So one is there's the basic idea of the benefits of running on infrastructure as a service, which is something I'm sure everybody here is familiar with. The idea that you, rather than continue to do data center refreshes, you would just subscribe to infrastructure. The refresh is the supplier's problem, and you don't have to worry about it. And you have, and particularly with our infrastructure, you actually have very good price performance characteristics of that infrastructure, probably relative to what you're running on your own data center. So that basic proposition of running infrastructure as a service is part of the value of doing this. One of the things that's really unique about the Oracle, the OCI infrastructure, is that we offer database as a service. So if you want to run on Oracle's engineered systems like Exadata, that's not available in anybody else's cloud. This is something where you can subscribe rather than buying an Exadata box and then buying a new one 3 or 4 years later on a hardware refresh cycle. You essentially subscribe to Exadata as a service. So we have a database service for running Exadata. We also have a database service running non-Exadata database tiers. But the idea is that you would consume both from a refresh perspective and from a licensing perspective. You can subscribe to the database as opposed to buying perpetual licenses. So that's a licensing benefit and an ability to get access to our engineered systems in a way that's all maintained for you. And then the third level of benefit is really the automation. For many EBS customers, this is actually the most compelling, is there's automation for many of the lifecycle management activities that you do to manage an EBS environment, because we can automate those lifecycle management activities more completely when it's all operating in the Oracle environment, because we know everything about the storage and the way to add nodes and how all the provisioning works and everything. So we can fully automate scenarios like setting up disaster recovery, which really all we can do in for the on-premise environment is just to provide instructions, because we don't know what your storage is. We don't know what your, remote backup capabilities are. We don't, you're making your own choices for those things. But in the OCI environment, where we understand exactly what's going on, we can more completely automate those things. So that is something that will take a lot of the cost and complexity out of the lifecycle management of eBusiness Suite, and is something that's uniquely available on our cloud infrastructure. So what are we talking about with that management? We're talking really three categories of things. One is provisioning. If you want to set up an environment, you can set up environments with the database cloud services, with the Exadata cloud service. You can set up a demo environment. You can set up proof of concept environment. You set up a production environment. So all of that provisioning and setting up environments is one of the key things we're automating. The second category is what we call lift and shift, which is the ability to take your existing system, including a production system, and move it over to our cloud infrastructure. So that takes all the configuration and the choices you made on premise and sets up the same thing for you in our cloud infrastructure, preserves all your customizations. So this is one of the key things that's different, for example, from moving to SaaS, where you're really re-implementing a different set of software and make a different set of setup choices. Here's a case where you actually have all your existing setup choices, and we just move them somewhere else to a different computer, and we provide automation for doing that. And then once you're in the cloud, we have the lifecycle management, which is ability to do fast cloning and ability to add nodes and delete nodes and do memory adjustments and set up disaster recovery and do monitoring and patching, all those kind of things that we can provide solutions for because we fully specify the underlying environment. Now, this is manifest to you, is available on 12.1 and 12.2, and it's manifest in something we call Cloud Manager. So that's what you see when you go to OCI. So this is where you have the user interface that allows you to provision new environments, to create a backup of an environment, to set up disaster recovery or whatever it might be through this kind of interface. So one of the things that we have offered in, we've delivered in just recently at the end of 2020 and early 2021 here is to enhance the Cloud Manager with a set of capabilities that many customers have been asking for. So things like what we call DMZ support, multi-zone support, so you can have some functions be outside a firewall and internet facing, and others are behind a firewall. Support for databases that have been upgraded to 19C, supported for adding and deleting nodes in your topology. A lot of people ask for the ability to essentially augment the scripting we provide to have post-provisioning tasks. After I set something up, after I copy an environment, I want to run an obfuscation script that scrambles the sensitive data in it or whatever, those kinds of things. So basically adding your own scripts to our provisioning framework. And the ability to do a reduced downtime lift and shift, which means that you essentially use like a disaster recovery setup. So you have a running system on premise, and then when you're keeping it very closely synchronized with a system running in the cloud, and then you can you can take an outage in the system on premise, let that synchronization catch up, and then pick back up and reopen the system on the cloud. So it's essentially if you will, almost like a failover into cloud with very minimal downtime. So for people who are migrating, production environments, we are concerned about high availability as you move into this OCI environment. We've now there's several scenarios that we're working on there, but we've already got that in at least several important cases. So I think that was a trip through really the investments we've been doing. Let me give you some information about where you can get more resources, more information. For those of you who are having difficulty finding folks in the application sales area who seem to be focused on your needs in e-business suite, we do have a licensed sales organization focused on the applications and limited products, including e-business suite. Here are the email IDs, depending on your region, to contact that group. You can always go to oracle.com/EBS to get to where we have all our latest announcements. We have links to videos, not just this learning channel video that you're on here, but also a lot of other resources that you can get to. So you're already watching this on the learning channel, so you're familiar with that. On the we, in addition to that, have what we call a learning center, which is really a platform for our transfer of information training about how to implement and use new features in the 12.2 release. So that's at oracle.com/EBS-learn. Our Advanced Customer Services Group, ACS, we mentioned them earlier, but they have a number of offerings that will help you on the path that you're on with the e-business suite. So we have this market-driven support for 12.1.3. If you're on the 11.2 database, they have a market-driven support for that. They will have a fixed cost, fixed fee service to get your 19C upgrade done. So that's if you're struggling with how am I going to fit in or get the right expertise for that 19C upgrade they need to do on the database, ACS can just come in and solve that problem for you. And there are other services here I'll let you take a look at that might be helpful for you as you go potentially through an upgrade to EBS. They have some high expertise services around reducing the downtime of the cutover, for example, in an upgrade. So the bottom line is that 12.2 is the release you want to be on. 12.2 provides value now, and there's a lot of things in 12.2 that you're probably not taking advantage of, that if you simply did more with what you already own by enabling some of the things I've described today, your users would be happier and your business would be more productive, and you don't have to buy anything to do it. So that's a really good set of things to be focused on. Modern user experience, including the command centers, all the functional innovation, customer-driven requests, and for those of you on 12.1, there's 10 years of functional innovation beyond where we were with the 12.1.3 release, so lots to look at there. Online patching and the fact that we don't have to have major upgrades anymore once you get to 12.2. And 12.2 is the long-term Premier support release we've committed to through at least 2031, but basically long-term Premier support is what to remember there. If you are on 12.1, you need to make a plan. Premier support does end at the end of 2021. We have an ability to do a couple of years of market-driven support at some additional cost while you either move to SaaS or move to the 12.2 of EBS release. But I would encourage you, if you're on 12.1, to get in motion in whatever the right direction is for your organization. So with that, let me thank you very much for attending. Hello, this is Cliff Godwin. I manage eBusiness Suite development at Oracle, and today I'd like to give you an update on our March 2021 delivery of new capabilities for our enterprise command centers. Now, we're going to first talk just a little bit to remind you about what we're doing with enterprise command centers, what that's all about, and how it fits into our roadmap. And then we're going to dive in and talk about the specific things that we've added, some highlights of what we've added in the March 2021 update, and then some places you can go for additional information. So let's dive in. Whenever we build eBusiness Suite functionality, really think of three buckets, really three different types of things we're doing. One is to enhance the user experience. The second is to add new features and functions that customers are asking us for. And the third is to make the system more highly available and lower cost to operate. So today's talk is really in the first bucket. It's really the highlight of the most important initiative we've had in the last couple of years to improve the user experience in eBusiness Suite, and that's enterprise command centers. Now, to show you where this fits into our roadmap, we have delivered many annual updates now to our 12.2 release. That's the continuous innovation release that will go on for long-term Premier support. And we do those major updates that add features and functions once a year. But alongside that, we've been adding since fall of 2018 our Enterprise Command Center deliveries on about a twice a year cadence. And so this is the March 2021 update that came after the 12.2.10 release last September. So it's our sixth release of Enterprise Command Centers. So the offering is getting quite mature at this point. So we'll talk to you a lot about some of the new things we've done. So just to remind you what the idea of enterprise command centers are, if you're not familiar with it, the idea is that end users of eBusiness Suite will begin their sessions with essentially a BI-driven homepage. So you start with key indicators and charts and graphs and lots of search capabilities to identify the important transactions for you to work on. The idea is that the end user has an easier experience getting to the transactions that they ought to be doing given their role in the organization than they would have if they had to consult reports that would tell them what the exceptions are or what the transactions are that are important for them to facilitate, and be able to get to whichever subset of those is important for them in a variety of powerful ways. And the benefit for the IT group is that the users won't be asking IT to produce as many custom operational reports to identify exceptions or late payments or whatever it might be that the user needs to know what to focus on. So it's a benefit both for the end users and usability and for the IT group in less maintenance of operational reporting. So where do we have this? We now have 31 command centers with over 110 dashboards, really in all the different areas of eBusiness Suite. So essentially, whatever areas you're running, we probably have a command center that would help you have a better user experience in that area. So some important notes about how command centers relate to the eBusiness Suite release levels. This is available on any patch level of EBS 12.2.4 or higher. It's not available on 12.1. If you're on 12.1, then you have to get to 12.2 to use this. But if you're pretty much on any reasonably current level of 12.2, you really don't have to go to a higher level of eBusiness Suite to take advantage of what we're going to talk about today. Importantly, they were not talking about something you have to buy. There's no additional cost for licensed users of the underlying products. This is tightly integrated with the EBS UI and security system, meaning that you are in an EBS session when you're using this dashboard. And when you navigate from the dashboard over to, you click on a link to a transaction page, it brings up the eBusiness Suite transaction page. And when you're done with that, you go back to the dashboard. There's nothing to set up twice. You don't need to log in twice, nothing like that. This is actually a UI within the EBS system. Of course, it supports all the languages that we support within EBS. And perhaps most importantly, it's extensible. We know that you are going to have additional data elements that aren't part of our base product that you're going to want to surface in key indicators or show in charts or use for filtering purposes. And so the mechanism makes it very easy for you to add your custom attributes to the dashboards, as well as making cosmetic changes to the dashboards. If you simply want to hide a tag cloud or change the type of a chart, of course, those things are available easily as well. So let's look at what we did and kind of dive right into some of the exciting things we've done for you lately. So what we're going to talk about today is really just some highlights. I mean, there's a lot more to what we've delivered than this, but these are really some of the exciting things we've done. Very active release in the manufacturing area in this cycle. So a couple of different new dashboards to talk about in the discrete manufacturing area, project manufacturer, quality, and costing. In inventory management, we're going to show you some cool capability in space utilization and slotting, also in asset tracking. And then in the financials area, we have some billing improvements for both projects and for service. So let's jump in. So let's talk about the discrete manufacturing case first. So we've had a very rich discrete manufacturing command center now for a number of releases. Some of the key things you could do with it are to identify cases where some of your work orders might be delayed. Maybe you have a component shortage and you're trying to figure out what item you could substitute to get the work order back on track. Or maybe you're tracking outside processing or outsourcing operations and you want to figure out that there are orders that are for raw materials that are late going to your manufacturing partner that may disrupt the flow of what your manufacturing partner is doing as an outsourcer for you. But today we're going to talk about some capabilities that we have added that are we'll start with a quality perspective, and this is a really very exciting new capability, a whole new type of visualization we have using what we call genealogy and trace. And then we'll tie that back to the assembly completions dashboard that we've added. So let me, before I launch into the demo, just set the context here a little bit. Of course, in manufacturing, you buy we use purchase orders to buy lots of material. And when those lots come in, those are lots of items, and those are then consumed in work orders to build assemblies, which then themselves become items and can be consumed in further work orders. And you build up your product over the different levels of the bill of materials until you've got an item which represents the finished product, which you're then going to ship to a customer in a sales order. So there's this sort of loop as you go through building items into higher level assemblies, and then those are consumed in work orders. And so there's an interesting way we have now of representing that. So what I want to show you is a scenario where we're going to investigate the root cause of a quality problem and then take action on it. So let's assume we start as the quality manager. And of course, what you want to do as a quality manager is look at why you have failed quality tests, basically why you're rejecting assemblies that went through your quality tests. And here you can look at the tag cloud and see that the most of the quality rejections we have are for the reason of finding a noise problem. So that's interesting. Let's go find out what that's about. So you just click on noise problem. And now we filtered down to the rejections that relate to that particular type of problem. And if you look down at the bottom right chart there, you can see that we have a couple of gearboxes, a G95 gearbox and G75 gearbox. Those are the assemblies that were where there are items rejected because of with the cause of noise problem. So what we could do now is look down lower in the page. You just scroll down. And what you see is at the bottom of the page, as always with ECC, there's Enterprise Command Centers, there's a list of the transactions that made up the data in the chart. So here you can see the list of the actual serial numbers of the gearboxes that failed our quality test. So what's new, particularly this is the most exciting thing, is we now have a new way to visualize what's happened. So you click on the link to the serial unit genealogy, and what you see now is a rendering of that whole consumption pattern from purchase orders up to lots, up to further work orders, into subsequent serial numbers, and all the way through to the final serial numbers that had the quality problem. Since you see what went into all of those products that had that failure. And what's great about this is what you're looking for here to do a root cause analysis is you're kind of looking for a common ancestor. Is there something that we can see that actually is common to all of those products that had that quality problem. Those finished goods on the, or those assemblies on the right side that actually had the problem. And so if you kind of study this chart, you actually find that, yeah, there is one particular lot that went into all of those assemblies that had the quality problem. And so we can look at this in a little more detail here, kind of zoom in and use the pop-up on that lot, little box there, to have some choices to look at more information. So let's look at the details of what we know about that lot. So as you look at the details of the lot, you can look down the different attributes there and say, well, actually, this is a medium precision grade lot. And the quality of precision that we normally have with this particular bolt is actually a high precision bolt. So this appears to be a situation where, you don't know that this is the problem, but this information certainly makes you suspicious. It looks like we've used a lot of material that didn't have a sufficiently fine manufacturing tolerance. It wasn't built to the right precision level that we normally use in this gear. So we are this gearbox assembly. So maybe that's the cause of our vibration problem or our noise problem. So we kind of got a suspicion here about the root cause of a problem. So the next thing we want to do is figure out, well, if this lot was kind of the wrong thing, if it could be the source of quality problems, where else was this consumed? What other assemblies did this go into? So you can make this particular lot the anchor node of the diagram. So now the diagram repaints focused on this particular lot. All the other ones dropped away, and now we're focused only on the places, the work orders that consumed parts from this lot. So we can see them all here. And what we really want to do is stop these potentially flawed products from actually going out to customers. So you can find some that haven't been yet associated with a sales order, like those couple at the bottom. They don't have a sales order associated with them, so they're sitting in the warehouse, haven't been shipped anywhere yet. So we can click on one of those, and it takes us directly over to the form that we use here to put those inventory items on hold. So you can set an inventory hold here, and now those won't be shipped to a customer. Now, you can also go and click on one of those sales orders to see whether or not you really shipped that yet. If you look down at the detail row and you read across to the status column, it says the status is picked. So this hasn't actually been shipped. We've actually gone and picked it in the warehouse, but it hasn't gone out yet. So from this screen, we can say, well, let's go up to the top, and one of the actions we can take is to apply holds. So we'll apply a hold to this item, so we're not going to ship that order because that might have a defective product in it, and we don't want that to go out. And then you can go through all the other sales orders and say, okay, maybe some of them did already go to customers. And for those, you can take whatever actions appropriate. You could notify the customer, or schedule proactive service, or issue a recall, or whatever you thought was appropriate to handle the rest of these. So the power of this mechanism is that visually we've been able to chain backward from a set of problems to identify a potential root cause. And then once we know we have a potential source of a problem, we can figure out the impact analysis. Where else what other finished goods did this problem potentially impact? And then we can go forward, and right from this interface, we can start taking action to prevent those, to address the quality problem we might have in the most responsible way. So that is this genealogy viewer is this is the first time we've used it in enterprise command centers, and we're going to have more use cases for it as we go forward. But this is a particularly exciting development. Now, if you're the production supervisor and those lots that we're putting on hold came back to you, you can see in this dashboard what those returns are. So this is basically assembly returns. And you can see the causes of the assembly returns. You can see in the tag cloud noise problem is a cause of 20. So the idea is that once you put those on hold and stop them from going out to customers, what will happen is they get returned back to the manufacturing process where they'll either be disassembled and the correct thing will be put in there in its place, and now they'll be a proper quality product, or some other action will be taken. But this lets you, as the supervisor, understand what's happening with these work orders and why you're getting returns. So a couple of different dashboards, all to support that kind of that set of use cases. Okay, so that was the discrete manufacturing side. Now let's shift gears. What we want to talk about next is a project manufacturing context. So project manufacturing is still a repetitive type of manufacturing, but typically you're building very large and complex things where each item that you're building, it may be customized, it may effectively be engineered to order, or maybe there's you're tracking each of them as a project. Maybe you make progress billings as you go through the process of billing this to your customer. And so, for example, if you're a defense contractor and you're building submarines or airplanes or something like that, or you're building engines for aircraft, I mean, that's typical cases where you'd use project manufacturing. So the idea in project manufacturing is to keep the project going and making sure the milestones that we have to progress the project and to be able to bill the customer are achieved on schedule. So you don't wind up incurring a lot of costs and then having big delays before you can bill the customer and recover those costs and so forth. So let's look at a project manufacturing scenario here and see how our new project manufacturing command center, it's the brand new command center in this release, how that helps us with this type of use case. So let's look at a work order that is starting to run late, and let's see if we can fix that problem. So I'm the production control team here. I'm the project supervisor for this, for an engine build project. And I can see I've got a work order schedule. So I've got various exceptions I can drill into, but in particular, I've got a work order schedule exception. One of my work orders is running late. So right from here, I can just click on that for that type of exception for this particular project, the Engine 8000 build project. And what I see here in the detail and the work order number is that the project was scheduled to end on March 20th. But the work order to do the final assembly here is actually only scheduled to end on the 23rd. So we're actually scheduled to be 3 days late at this point. So we have a 3-day exception that we have to respond to see if we can get back in and meet our customer commitment to get this out on the 20th. So we can click on that work order and see what's happening. So we are looking at, here's the detail of the work order itself, and it says that's work order is now set to start on the 17th and take till the 23rd. So this is the 23rd is the thing that's making us late. So let's look inside this work order and see what components are involved with it to see if we can understand why it's going to be late. So you just click on the Components tab, and this lists all the parts that are going to be consumed in that work order. And you can see how many are required. If you go over to the required quantity column, you see how many this work order requires and how many have been issued to the work order. And there you can see the problem that basically our work order of that last, for that last component, the 2340 component, we need 20 of those, but we've only been able to issue 10 from inventory. So we're behind here. We're short 10 that we need. That's why we're late. So from here, you can go up to the procurement tab. If you look up at the top, you see we can flip over to the procurement tab and see, okay, where were those supposed to come from and what's going on? So you look at procurement, and you can say we had a delivery coming where the need by date was the 15th, right? We needed them a couple of days before we started the work order, but the new promise date, because the supplier is late, the new promise date is really the 18th. So that's really the root cause of our 3-day slip. It's that the delivery of these components that we need is 3 days late from the vendor. So at this point, you could work with the procurement department and see if the vendor could, accelerate this and get back on time. But let's assume that they can't. Assume that there's no way to get these to show up on time. So now you're kind of stuck. So what you can do now is look in inventory to say, well, maybe since this part is needed on this work order and it's going to delay the actual delivery, maybe we have some of these same components in inventory for some other project where they're not really on the critical path. They aren't as urgently needed. So let's look at inventory and see what our situation is. So here we look at we find other products that consume the same item number. We're filtering on this item number that filter was preserved from before. So as we look at inventory, what we can find is we actually do have some of these in inventory. They've all been assigned to a different engine project, the 800 SE or 8000 SE engine project. So we have them, but they're just not assigned to the project where they're needed most. So now we want to see, well, when does that project really need these components? So from here, we look at the work orders associated with that project, and we can see that their start date for that work order is the 24th. So we kind of have a solution because we're going to get this new shipment on the 18th. That would be good enough for this other project. So actually what we could do is borrow some of these components for the project where they're critically needed. So at this point, go back over to the inventory tab, and from here we can kick off what we call a borrow payback operation to a material borrow from this other inventory locator where that they are on store for the other project. So from here, you kick that off and you go to the screen where you accomplish that. You get the 10 that you're going to reallocate from the other projects locator where it's stored for them and put it in the locator where it's available for the project that's critical path. And then when you come back, having done that borrow operation, the system will update and say, okay, those are now assigned to the project where they're needed, and the work order is now back on track. And you can see you actually can complete this by the 19th, which is before you needed to finish it to deliver it to the customer on the 20th. So this project borrow scenario is a way where you can work your way through the material behind the project that you're focused on, and then other potential projects where, if necessary, you could borrow material and keep everything on track. So it just shows you the power of the mechanism to solve that type of problem. So the next one I want to talk about is a quality example where we are going to try to find the root cause of quality problem. And this is a new sample analysis dashboard that we have. So let's take a look at that. So what we're going to do is start with when you're doing quality sampling, and this is a process manufacturing use case. So let's suppose we're making strawberry jam. And we have some tests we do before we ship the products out to customers. We do some sampling of the final products that we have ready to go, just to make sure they're okay before they go out to customers. And so if I'm the quality manager, I'm looking at my sample results here, and I see I've got some rejections for a particular item. So let's click on the red there and look at the rejections. And now we filtered down to the item where we've been seeing rejections. And if you look over on the right graph at the bottom, we've actually had a couple of problems. We have a viscosity test that's failed and a color test that's failed. So the question you have is, well, okay, if I'm having these kind of problems at the finished goods stage, are we seeing those kind of problems occur anywhere like back in inventory when we're doing intermediate testing? So you look back in inventory, click on the inventory tab here, and sure enough, there's some quality rejections for color and viscosity, but they're specific to a particular locator back in the places where we're storing these and we're testing them along the way. And it looks like there is a particular locator where we're seeing these variances. The RFU1 is a refrigeration unit. So when we click on that one, we see, yep, that seems to be the problem. We have some that we're accepting, but they've had some quality variance. There's some that are so far off, we're actually rejecting them. The root cause of the corrective action that's been prescribed when these different tests have occurred is to adjust the storage temperature of this unit. So it looks like we've probably got a bad refrigerator unit here, and we have to, take some kind of action on that. So so the next thing you might want to do is to say, let's relax the constraint on looking only at that one item and instead look generally at everything going on in that refrigeration unit. And now you can see at the bottom left that, yes, we actually have several different items that have been stored in that unit, and they all are showing some level of quality problem. So at that point, we've kind of got a pattern. We figured out that the problem with the specific thing we were looking at was in this refrigeration unit. And now we've verified that other items are affected as well. So at this point, we pretty much have narrowed it down. We've got a maintenance problem with that refrigeration unit, and we need to raise a maintenance request to address that as a mechanical issue. Okay, so that shows you how you can resolve from a sampling perspective, how you can find the root cause of a quality problem and narrow it down and address it. The last one I want to talk about in this area is cost management. And here we have some new cost comparison and reconciliation capabilities to talk about. I won't do a full flow through demo in this case, but just to describe what you can do is you can look for across different ways of filtering. You can find your cost variances, how your actual costs deviated from standard costs. And you can also compare actual costs across organizations or batches. Is it just one batch that had a deviation from standard costs, or is this a pattern? Are they all coming in a little heavy with one particular type of variance? You could actually compare whether your actuals to make a product in one, maybe you're making the same product in two different lines or even in two different locations. You could actually compare the actual costs that you're experiencing in two different locations. Maybe I can make something for $2.50 in one location, but the costs, the actuals are coming in at $2.60 in another location, even though they both have the same standard cost. You can get to the bottom of where is that discrepancy? What is it that's costing more one place than another? The amount of time used, is it an overhead rate? What is it? So to get into the bottom of your variances and to more accurately establish standard costs for following periods, because if you're always running at $2.60 to make something and your standard cost is $2.50, when you go to establish your standard cost for the next period, maybe you should just update it to be $2.60 because that's what your actuals are experiencing. So it's a way to make your accounting, your standard costs more accurate on a go-forward basis, and also a way to get to the root cause of comparison differences that you see in your actual costs. So we have a dashboard now that really helps you do all of that. So let's turn now from manufacturing, where we've had a very robust set of functionality there, to inventory management. And this is a real interesting area too. Inventory management is one of our richest command centers. We have outbound logistics, we have warehouse efficiency related logistics, we can manage cycle counts, we can prioritize receiving actions, we can do all kinds of things. What we've added this time is some functionality around space utilization and slotting, which is just let me give you a little bit of background about what's involved with this. So there are many types of storage in a warehouse environment, and what you are trying to do is make sure that your storage is efficiently utilized. So you want to monitor your different storage units, your different storage locations, we call them locators, to see if you have, for example, a lot of different bins for the same item, and each of them is only partially full. I mean, that's an inefficient use of storage that you might want to optimize. So you can have fragmentation problems where your storage is inefficiently used for those type of reasons. And then we have what we call slotting. So the idea is that you would classify your items that you pick based on transaction volume. Because every time you pick something, there's some resources, there's some travel time that gets consumed, there's some labor that gets consumed, or machine time that gets consumed. So things that need to be picked very frequently, you want to have be in locators, which are ideal for picking frequently, meaning that they have the minimal distance to where you're going to consume the item, either in the shipping process or in a work order process where it begins to be consumed. But things that are needed frequently, you want to have in those type of locations. So the idea is you would classify your items on kind of A, B, and C based on the transaction volume. And you have locators that you classify A, B, and C based on the picking distance, based on how much work is associated to go from the time you pick to where it's consumed. And the concept is you want to slot those high velocity items into those high velocity locators, your A items and your A locators, to optimize the efficiency of your warehouse operation. So again, with that background, let's go solve a couple of problems. So, okay, you're the inventory manager, and you have your Class A locators, your Class B locators, and your Class C locators. And then the first thing you observe is, of course, you care a lot about your Class A locators. Those are precious. Those are the ones that are sort of right up front where you want all the high volume activity to be occurring for your warehouse to be efficient. So the first thing you observe is you actually seem a little short of, you have very few empty locators. So you've got a risk that all your Class A locators are kind of filling up. So let's look at those Class A locators in more detail and see what's going on. So the first thing you could see from a chart of like which items are in which locators, you can spot really from here pretty easily. The first item on the left is consuming 13 locators, but it actually doesn't have much more overall quantity. If you look at the chart on the right, the total amount of quantity for this item is really not that much more than a number of other items. So basically you've got the kind of the same amount of material, but in this particular item, you've spread it out of a lot more locators. So you want to drill in and look more detail what's going on there. And this gives you the charts here, really a magnification of what we were just looking at. You can see that you have a lot of, on the top right of that chart, you can see you have a lot of locators that are not full. And then when you look down at the actual detail in the rows here, you can see that the locators at the bottom, which are pretty full, seem to hold 256 units, but then you have 5 locators at the top that have only like 25 to 35 up to 55 units in it. And so those are the inefficiently used, partially used locators. So what you want to do here is initiate a move request to consolidate those underutilized locators to free up some of them for other types of items. So the way we do that is from here, we click on those ones we want to consolidate, and we initiate a move request, carries all of that information over the transaction screen, and you can set up the move order here for it and then save that, and then they'll all be reallocated to a single consolidation locator. So now, sort of a companion problem is the slotting problem. So let's say we are looking at our Class A items and we've got our locators, and what you're interested in is which Class A items do I have that are not in a Class A locator? Things that are frequently accessed where somebody has to go farther back in the warehouse to get them. So let's just click on the part of the pie chart for Class A locators. And what we see now looking over to the right is of the Class A locators, we see there's a little sector there, that purple one that's Class B. Those are the Class A items and the Class B locators. So you can click on that little part of the pie chart, and now you found the exact set of things that you need to move. So now that we freed up, in the earlier part of the demo, we freed up some locators by consolidating. And now we want to move some of the things that were over in the Class B storage into those locators. And we can do that by initiating the move request here. Just like before, it takes those over to a transaction screen, and you set up the move order and you save that. And now you've got all your Class A items in Class A locators. Okay, shifting gears once again. So let's talk about asset tracking. And in this area, the asset tracking product is really for companies that are most often used by companies that have a large number, very large number of assets. For example, if you're a cable TV company and you provide set-top boxes, the set-top box asset maintenance is the kind of thing we're talking about. So early on in this dashboard or this command center, we focused on the process of the capitalization flow. As you manufacture those set-top boxes and you place them in service, you can say, okay, place this set in service so they're ready to start being depreciated, and therefore we need to identify the ones we place in service and then send that information over to fixed assets so we can begin set them up as financial assets that are being depreciated. We've enhanced that now for more of that kind of life cycle flow beyond the setup and initial capitalization. Now we're dealing with kind of maintenance tasks in this area. So things like you got some set-top boxes back and you're going to retire them. They're old, or they're defective and you're going to take them out of service, or you're going to move them from one store to another, or something like that. So you can basically register from the command center. You can identify subsets of your assets and set up actions that effectively begin the retirement or flag them as out of service and so forth. And they're associated financial flows where you make the corresponding updates back over into fixed assets. Okay, shifting gears once again, we're shifting gears now to a little more on the financial side with projects. So here the goal is to the goal in projects, if you're managing projects, is always to improve your cash flow. And so one of the things you need to do is make sure that you are progressing your billable transactions after people incur time on a project. You want to bill the customer for that efficiently. Now, sometimes there are anomalies that come up that stop you from billing efficiently. Your billing is on hold for some reason, so you've paid whoever did the work, but you haven't recovered the money yet. So you're out the working capital until you make that recovery. So you're the billing manager and you want to solve those problems so you can get your billing to happen. So we're looking at our budget, basically our revenue budget, how much we expected to make in a particular month in revenue, and we're actually short of that. We aren't ready, or we haven't billed customers for that. We aren't ready to bill customers for all of that yet. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. So let's zero in on the particular month. And when we do that, we have a metric in the system called ready to generate revenue. So that means that you have transactions that should be billable, but before you actually do the accounting and then send an invoice to the customer, you need to make sure that they're valid and that everything's okay. Because once you commit them to being sent out, they'll go out to customers as bills. So you have sort of a validation step here. And there may be reasons why things are not ready to be for the revenue generation step to occur. So what happens here is that if you look down the details of this ready to bill metric, what you see in the transactions is that we have some of them where the bill rate source is not our normal rate chart. The reason that this kind of thing can happen is let's say you hired an employee with a particular skill set, a unique skill set, and you hadn't entered the billing rate for that employee. So you can, then what happens is maybe by default, there's an estimated rate that is in the system, but you're not going to bill the customer for the estimated rate. You have to get the rate correct before you can actually bill the customer for that person's time. So you can look down this list and you can flag that type of problem. So here we can actually click on estimated and say, well, let's not just look at the ones that came up in this list here. Let's find all the estimated bill rate problems. And we see on the bill rate source, this is all the estimated problems. And then you can this is a list of the expenditures, but you can actually look at additional attributes of this set of transactions. And when you do that, what you find is that the employee, you can find that these all are traced to a particular employee. So now you've found the person who has the bill rate that's not set up correctly. So it'd be very complicated to figure this out without a mechanism like this. But now you've just with a few clicks, you've found your way to saying, okay, the main reason we can't get our bills out here for this set of transaction is that this particular person doesn't have a valid bill rate set up. So you can go resolve that. And then once you get that sorted out, you come back and all of these things have been updated. They're still on hold, and you can query it all back up, review it one last time, make sure that it's all correct now. And when it is, from this interface, you can actually click on all these items and release the revenue hold right from here. Okay, and we have another capability around billing in the service area. And here the idea is that you may have some charges that are hung up. You're not really ready to bill the customer again, so you have to go find out why can't we bill our customer. So let's take a look at, we have what we call stalled charge lines, which means things that the service technician said, this is how much you ought to bill, but because of various flags or checks that have been done, we're not ready to send that bill out to the customer. It went past some threshold or some rule and kind of got caught and put on hold. So your job is to resolve that. So here you are looking at, you're the service administrator, you're looking at all of these charges, and you can, if you look at the pie chart there are certain charges that are flagged as needing review. So it's your job to review them. So you click on that little segment that needs review. Now we're in the context only of the service charges that need review. And let's say we are interested in a particular customer, or let's take this one customer at a time. Let's say if we want to set out the service charges for this AC Networks customer. So let's click on that customer. And now we're in the context just of the charges that needed review just for this one customer, AC Networks. And all the details of that are shown down here below. So you actually have the particular service request that is causing this problem. We found the service request that has charges on it that got flagged as needing review. And you can actually look over in the error message and see what some of these problems might be over on the bottom right. It's like, well, we had an estimate for this service call, and the charges that the technician reported are higher than the estimate. In one case, they actually exceed a specific threshold we set. We're going to bill more than $1,000, and whenever that happens, we want a review. So this triggered that rule also. So what you could do here is drill directly into that service request to look at the details. So now we have the service debrief that the technician, which has the text that the technician actually supplied, and you can see that they actually accounted for this. They said the labor hours was 10, which is more than normal, because when I was fixing this problem, I found an additional problem and I fixed that too. And the customer has actually approved this. So we have all the detail with the customer's approval here. So having seen that, I'm comfortable that we should go ahead and submit this bill because the customers agreed that this is all right. And so from here, I'll click on those three service request lines, and I'm ready to submit those charge lines for billing. Okay, so that is just the highlights of what we've accomplished in the 6 months of building out new capabilities in ECC at the functional level. In addition to this, we have a significant set of new features at the framework level that apply to all our existing command centers, as well as the new things that we talked about. We have this new network diagram that we showed you. We have some new capabilities within the charting that are available for end users to take advantage of. We have some capabilities that are more for developers or for people who are doing custom extensions. Like as you do your own custom extensions, we have new capabilities you can leverage as well in the framework. So this is a summary of what we did overall, including a lot of things we didn't talk about today. So I just wanted to put that in context here, that this is actually highlights. So you can get more information. You can always get information or oracle.com/EBS. We have all of our announcements and roadmaps and support information and everything there. And then specifically around ECC, we have what we call a quick start guide that helps you get started with the process of setting up ECC. And we have in detail, we have the release content documents, which actually will cover in every area, every feature that we added. So if there are things we added that we just didn't talk about in today's presentation, you'll find all of those in the release content documents. So I'd encourage you to study those in detail for the areas that you're interested in. So that's all I had for today. With that, I'll thank you for listening, and good luck using Enterprise Command Centers. I hope you enjoy it.